Have you ever had an aha moment? One of those times where it just like all of a sudden something made sense to you. You'd been fighting with something for a while and it just all of a sudden, poof, came together for you. Well, my guest today, Roseanne Nieboer, had that experience. And she had it around connecting what she had been doing in yoga for some years. She's a yoga teacher. What she had been doing in yoga with a pain that she was experiencing in her hip region. She had a teacher say to her, well, maybe this is related to suppressing some emotions of some kind. Can you think of anything? And all of a sudden, she'll tell you in the podcast today that it wasn't just a light bulb moment. It was the entire stadium of lights that went off in her head. And I think that each of us has had at least a mild experience of this where, we've been muddling along with something for a while, like hip pain or something, an emotional issue, something, and we just can't seem to wrap our mind around why it's bothering us. And then all of a sudden there's just kind of a connection. And just as if a spark gets lit, we start to understand how these things interconnect. Well, what to do from there, right? Well, today's guest is going to help you with that. So she shares with us her own light bulb stadium light up moment. And she also shares with us some ideas for how we might journey once we've had that intuitive sense of how all these things connect, what we do next. So keep listening. Welcome. This is Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving, a podcast that teaches women in midlife to unapologetically stop silencing their dreams and start designing the lives they want to live in. I'm your host, Dr. Natalie, and as a clinical psychologist of the last 2 decades and a twice divorced single mother myself, I not only know how hard it can feel heading into midlife, I am living it right here with you. I have taken all the many failed attempts and lessons learned in my own life and combine it with my extensive clinical experience to give you the tools you need to make midlife the best time in your life. No joke. So let's get started.
Are you on my mailing list yet? Because if you're not, you really should be. You want to join at learntoloveyourstory.com. If you scroll down, I'm giving away a freebie for you. Honestly, you know what it is? A free course. I sell online courses, but this is a course just for you. And it's about freeing yourself, letting go of what others' expectations and ideas are for you. That nagging self-doubt in your head, it's usually fueled by your consideration of what others think of you over your consideration of what you think of you. And so I teach you in my video all about what is underlying that kind of self-doubt and how to get out of that conundrum. And I give you a workbook that goes with it that helps you to build the skill sets that you're going to need for that. So please make sure you're on my mailing list, because at the least, you're going to get a free gift. And at the most, you're going to hear about all the things that we're doing on Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving and learntoloveyourstory.com. And you don't want to be missing out on any of the new things that'll be coming your way.
Welcome back, everybody, to Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving. Today's guest is Roseanne Nieboer, and she has been a yoga teacher for some time, over 20 years, just like me, being a psychologist. And as she matured as a yoga teacher, the spiritual and philosophical sides of the practice became more of her focus. She uses the chakras as a foundation for self-development, and that is now her passion, is to help guide her clients through a journey of discovering their energetic body by understanding the chakras, connecting physically with their energy through yoga, and connecting with the spirit and inner wisdom through the power of meditation. You all know how much meditation means to me on this podcast, and how I am always preaching about how slowing that mind down and gaining the ability to be the one that's in charge of where your focus is, in charge of where your mind goes, instead of feeling so barraged by the stress of life, by the programming and social conditioning of life, all those things. So I really am excited to bring Roseanne on today and have her talk to us a little bit more about what she does and how she comes at it just a little bit differently. So without further ado, here's Roseanne. Well, let's welcome Roseanne Nieboer to the Midlife Crisis to a Centered Life Thriving podcast. Welcome, Roseanne. We are so happy to have you here.
Oh, well, thank you, Dr. Natalie, for having me. I'm very happy to be here. This is a fantastic subject that your podcast is about. I'm all about it. So let's get stuck in.
Let's get stuck in. I love that. Yes. So I ask every guest that comes on our podcast, tell us your story. Let us know what made you get to this point today where you're on my podcast.
Hey. I think my story started probably in my early 20s when I first discovered yoga. So that was my first thing. And, when I was a kid, when I was at school, I was hopeless at anything physical. I'd run away from the ball. I was not that person. And so I stumbled across a book that was about yoga, and I read it, and it just resonated so deeply with me.
Wow.
And I was like, and I found a class nearby me, and we're talking quite a number of decades ago.
Just a few.
Just a few. Definitely more than two. So decades ago, when yoga was not on every street corner, and you didn't just find a yoga club clicking online. Anyway, I found a class, fell in love completely the first time I went in. And then that's been my sort of journey. That's been the background of my life for ever since, but it's become more and more in the front. So 20 years ago or so, I did my teacher training. I started to teach, loved that, had small children, was doing the do like you do when you've got small kids. And, yoga and teaching yoga was it was my respite. It was my space, and we all need to have that.
We do.
And I knew how fantastic it made me feel. And I never really thought to inquire why it made me feel so good and why it kept me so centered and grounded. And I'm just doing it. And that's that. And then I suppose probably about 10, 12 years ago, I was in India on a yoga retreat, and I woke up one night with like this horrific hip pain, like for no good reason whatsoever, just in a real pain, like in my joints. And so I thought, okay, well, this is just a bit weird. So I got out of bed and sort of stretched around a little bit. Nothing made it any better. In fact, it made it worse. And this pain just spread to all my joints, my hips, my elbows, my knees, my shoulders. And I was like, what is going on? Anyway, made it through the night, just drank a lot of water, made it through. And then I was fine. There was nothing materially wrong with me. And so I was talking to my yoga teacher, because it was a yoga retreat, of course.
Yes.
I talking to my yoga teacher the day after, and she was like, well, do you think this might have something to do, what are you holding in your sacral chakra? Because that's where we hold a lot of emotions. And I'm like, a million light bulbs all went off. A stadium's worth of light bulbs went off. And I was then completely enamored and hooked. And it just, again, another moment where everything just felt completely aligned. And I'm like, this is the next step. This is the path. This is the reason. And everything fell into place. So from yoga to understanding the energetic side of yoga, rather than just the physical and enjoying all the other benefits just by sort of default, by not on purpose, if you like, I then to be a lot more purposeful about it. And I began to introduce the chakras and all of that sort of energy work side of things into my yoga classes. And my students loved it. They were like, this is fantastic. Tell us more.
Yes.
And so from then, when lockdown happened, I then thought, because I was catering, I was being a cook, catering people's parties and so on. And I didn't really love it that much. I could do it, but I wasn't in love with it. Not like I am with the work that I do now anyway. And so lockdown was a gift really for me, because it allowed me to go, right, draw a line under the catering, because no one's having any parties. And
truth.
sit at home in front of sit in front of my laptop and create something new. So I then took everything that I'd learned and read and felt and understood and put it into a big fat course. And initially I was teaching, and I taught it as like an 8-week course, and we would just go through all the chakras and I would integrate it, because this is the key for me, is integrating mind, body, and spirit. So the yoga is the mind. Sorry, it's the body. Yoga is the body. The mind, the understanding of what's going on is your mind. And then the meditative and the breath work and stuff, that speaks to the spirit. So I was just fully in my moment and arrived at where I am today, which is this work that I'm totally super passionate about, is about spreading the wisdom of the chakras, about encouraging people to understand their energetic bodies and applying it into their lives in a way that works for them, because not everybody wants to hop on a yoga class. Not everybody wants to faff around with crystals or what have you. There's a different way for everybody. So yeah, that's my journey. I
love it.
And it's ongoing.
And one of the things that it's fascinating to me, getting to do these interviews after starting this podcast, how many of us have a very similar origin story of why we're doing what we're doing right now. And COVID was such a catalyst, was it not? Like, it was such a pattern disruptor. I mean, I'm a clinical psychologist, so I get kind of nerdy about that stuff, but it interrupted our pattern of just doing the hustle that we had been doing. And some of us, as we reckoned with that, we're like, yeah, I can do much more in the world. And so I love that origin story, because you could listen. It's kind of the greatest hits on this podcast. You can listen to several people I've interviewed. It's a very similar background. I just love that. I love that. Yeah.
Well, I think we all reevaluated what was really important to us. We were in really scary times. It was real life and death situations. Some people were very unlucky in losing loved ones and friends and so on. And it was like, actually, let's just live now. Let's do what we love. Let's do what matters to us. This role that we're, the circus that we're in is just not fulfilling anymore. And also it opened up this incredible, the big benefit to me, and I'm sure to you as well, is that it opens up this wonderful thing called Zoom and, and all these wonderful ways of connecting to people, so that, you can talk. I was going to yoga classes during lockdown. I was going to yoga classes with the most incredible teachers over in California that I would never have got to before.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's extraordinary time.
It's extraordinary. Yeah. You were exposed to, things that you probably never would have picked up and done. And I do think that a large part of it was, it was a life or death thing. It wasn't just a pattern disruptor like, oh, this is uncomfortable. We can't go to work at work. We have to stay home. It was also like, you can't go outside because you might die. Like, that's huge. That's a huge thing that really catapulted us to kind of reckon with, am I doing in my life right now what I want to be doing? So that's fair point. Very fair point. Well, so one of the things that drew me to your story, I noticed that you had mentioned, as I matured and took on learning more about that spiritual and philosophical side, then this really opened up, and now I'm really passionate about what I do, which you have stated for us so lovely, so eloquently. I am wondering, when that light bulb moment, or like you said, it was a stadium light bulb, all the light bulbs went off when she said, this thing in your hip is really connected to something you're storing emotionally. Walk us through that. What all of a sudden clicked for you in that moment?
I think, gosh, what was it that clicked? It's just that it made complete sense to me as a human. I realized that, a very bare bit of research will tell anybody that the sacral chakra, which encompasses your hips and the part of the endocrine system attached is your reproductive system. And within our hips, we hold our emotions. Each chakra holds a different portion of your life, your emotional life and your physical life. So, for example, in your root chakra, you hold things around aspects around your home and your family and your safety and your stability and your groundedness. And in your sacral chakra, you hold things like creativity and fun and fluidity, movement, but you also hold your relationships, your sexuality there too. But one of the biggest ones that you hold there is your emotions. So your emotional life you hold in your sacral area, in your hips. So really frequently as a yoga teacher, you're often opening the hips. And so people come in with very stiff hips. And it's very easy to say to them, because I was that person as well, as a child, did you stuff your emotions down? Were you able to be emotionally eloquent? Were you invited to attach meaning to your emotions? Were you invited to talk about your emotions? Were they welcome at the table?
Yeah.
Do you now recognize your emotions? Do you know how you're actually feeling? Do you, and when you worked out what you're feeling, do you know how to process it?
Yeah.
And all of those things I can say no to. I was not emotionally fluent. And I had, by this stage, I'd been married, I'd had kids, all the rest of it, and all the trials and tribulations that go alongside all of that. And I had been stuffing stuff down into my hips for years, for decades. And because I was in this environment of warmth and openness and physical action, I was on the yoga mat like 5 hours a day. My hips suddenly, I had a release and they suddenly went, whoa, you've taken the lid off this. And it's just, everything's coming out. And I was, because when you're on a retreat and you're with lovely people and they're quite often they're strangers, but you kind of click. And so your stories come out, your truth comes out because you've got nothing to hide. You're a new person. You can be whoever you want to be. There's no shame in telling people that you're unhappy about this or that aspect of your life or what have you. So that coupled together with the physical side of it just exploded that element. So for me, in that moment of understanding hip pain was an understanding of my emotional history or lack of.
Yes. And if I heard you right, it also, so all you did was put those two dots together or this yogi teacher helped you put those two dots together and then you experienced release. Am I hearing that correctly? Wow. Because that's pretty amazing. When you think about it, it really is just that mindful moment of putting them together. You didn't have to do anything spectacular with it. You just had to start to notice and understand that the two were interconnected.
Exactly. And this is a lot of the work with the chakras and understanding your energetic body. Like the top of the list is awareness, is just knowing.
That's amazing.
Just having that awareness of going, okay, I'm having some stomach issues here. What could be the problem? And then if you know your chakras and you know that this is your power center, this is potentially to do with work or money or your strength or your muscles or I don't know, whatever. But your digestive system, your belly will it'll tell you. And then you can start exploring. And then you can also, so you go into that sort of folder, if you like, of what is being held energetically in this area of my body. And then you can go into all the various different ways of finding relief or, finding some kind of solution that's going to help ease you through this.
Yeah.
But awareness is the biggest one of all, just understanding.
Yes, just knowing. I'm so affirmed by hearing that because that's at the top of what I teach in my skills-based training as well. And I again, very similar story. I just put it all into an online course and then I started group coaching, all the things that I knew. But yes, I think that awareness is so key because it opens up everything else that you can do differently for yourself. If you're not in awareness of how those things interconnect, then you won't, do the subtle things to be just showing up to it differently, not stuffing, for instance, in what you're describing for us, like recognizing that when emotions feel big and I don't know how to metabolize them, then I stuffed them. And then what will happen is pain in that hip region. And so, that just those subtle differences you wouldn't have been able to pick up on had you not started to connect those dots. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think when you get deeper still into it, people have so many challenges in life, and especially, in midlife, we have aging parents, we have, young adults who are trying to make their way in the world. Yep. Plus, everything else that we go through. Menopause in this age of losing your mind.
Yes, of losing your mind and your body at the same time.
Exactly. But we try. We so often as humans, we're like, our brains are supreme, and we're going to sort it all out by thinking and reading and knowing in our minds. When in fact, we can offload so much of this work to the body because we hold so much of our stuff. So very technical. Do you like my technical terms that I'm using here? Like those technical terms. We hold all this stuff in our bodies, and we can take this back to, quantum physics, the energy that is held. Everything that we experience is held energetically within our cells of our body. And it is retained. So in order to release it, we don't have to go to therapy. Therapy helps. I love therapy, but we don't have to just think about it and try and unwind it with our brains. We can just step onto the mat and open our hips. We can turn on some music and dance like an absolute lunatic. We can shake our bodies. We can scream. We can stamp our feet. We can punch a pillow. We can walk to the top of a mountain and sing hallelujah. We can sing, singing is another amazing modality of healing. We can meditate. We can try and just notice our thoughts. There are all these things that we can do with our bodies that our minds, we just need to have the information in our minds to go, oh yes, that's the thing that would be good for us, right, to do right now. Yeah. And we step onto the mat to do whatever, or onto the dance floor or whatever. But movement of the body and understanding that we hold this stuff in our bodies and that we can release it through working with our bodies is, God, it's such a relief.
It is kind of a relief because I think, that's why I thought it was just so lovely, the way that it just was an aha moment, and then release started to happen for you. Then you went back to your body and you were working through that, but you didn't need to know what your body was doing to metabolize that. You had just made the connection. So the awareness is key, and really figuring it all out and problem solving through it is not the end all be all. That's a very programmed, socially conditioned idea, Western socially conditioned idea that I don't think it actually serves us in any way in our midlife. Because as you said, like, especially in midlife for women, like your body and your psyche are going through so many changes. It's kind of a second adolescence of our life. And we're going to come out the other side a very different being, which is really hard when you've got 50 some years behind you of being one way. And you're going to have to let that go. Like, it's an evolution, because you won't bring with you all the aspects of your physical and, emotional well-being and spiritual well-being in the same way in this second act, so to speak. And so, yes, I love that, the energy work really opens up your ability to kind of approach it from many different directions. That sounds amazing. So, what's the challenge that you see for, women in this age group in particular, when they're coming to you for help? What are the things that are barriers that you've seen?
Well, the thing that I find most often is this very common issue of women who have raised the kids, they've done the do, they've maybe, they've had a career, and they reach this stage where they go, okay, so I did that. That was kind of what I had always planned to do, that dream of, and have a family and, and a career. Lovely. You've done that. And you're like, okay, so here I am with another 10, 20, however many years, decades, left of my life. and actually, this is my only life in this particular body, in this particular time. What is it that I want to do? So the thing that comes up most for me is people finding a new purpose. So they find a new thing that they want to do that lights them up, that they feel passionate about. And they're like, how the hell do I do that? I'm 50 something, or I'm, late 40s. And I'm like, I want to change direction completely. How do I do that? And I feel so blocked. I've got all of this baggage and all of these expectations, this external expectations on me to be a certain way, to do a certain thing.
Yeah.
And I'm turning around to the world going, do you know what? I'm done with you. And I actually want to be my own person. I want to live my life how I want to live it. I think for me, if I can, and this is going to sound slightly bad, but this is my experience of midlife as well, is that you suddenly become outrageously selfish. And you go, do you know what? I don't want to please everybody else. I don't want to mother everybody else. I don't want to pick up after everybody else anymore. I want to do what I know I am capable of doing. And now I need to work out how the hell I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I have. That's the most common thing that I have. People in a big transition moment in their lives going, I was doing this and now I want to do that, or I want to just shift my life, or I want to understand this awakening. And a lot of people come to me when they're having some kind of awakening to a spiritual life, to that life is more than just the daily, round of and chore.
Yes.
And they go, there is more. And it's an interesting one because a lot of people obviously have been brought up with religion or not. But a lot of people I find are skeptical of religion. I think if people have religion and have faith, then that is enough. That's their spirituality. So it's the people who are like, I'm not interested in investing in the dogma of a religion. Right. But I feel being drawn towards spirituality and understanding and a connection in some other direction. Yeah. And, people don't want to necessarily become a Buddhist or whatever. They just want to have a life that feels meaningful.
Yes.
And
connected.
That's exactly.
And connected. Because I think that women in particular, one of the social conditionings that we have is to be caretakers, like to always be giving of ourselves and selfless. Now, there's all sorts of negativity that goes with that. One of the internal superpowers though that gets developed with that is that we have a high aptitude for seeing connection and wanting to create connection, right? And so this journey that you're talking about, I love it. I love that you're like, we get a little selfish. As I also talk about that in my programs. It's so funny, the synchronicities here. But, when we're selfless, we are our selfless. And I think that first half of our life, we've done that for way too long. And so part of the burnout is that there's just that's not sustainable. And so we do need to start to invest in ourselves in some capacity. And as we do that, what's so interesting to me is that we're looking though to reconnect with the world. We're not doing it in the selfish idea, the definition of selfish that we're seeing in the pop culture idea where it's like, you're all about you, you're self-absorbed, you're not going to, no, women do it in such a way that we want to know ourselves better as a tool for that connectivity, which it's so brilliant, right? Like, it's just like, oh my gosh, because the sum of we're so much greater than the sum of the parts of all of us. So when we work in conjunction with one another, or see the connections together, it's so much more powerful what we can accomplish, and our purpose feels more in alignment, I believe.
Yeah. Exactly. And, this is exactly what I find as well. And it's not like people are coming to me and they say, I just want to go and live on a Caribbean island and drink martinis all day long. Like, that's not what people want. What people are coming to me for, just the other day, I had a beautiful client, and she wants to move out of doing what she's currently doing, and she wants to become a choir leader because she's experienced and knows the power of choirs and singing because it's really helped her And she wants to do this for young mothers who are struggling in that young motherhood area time. And so, you know, this shift that she's trying to make in her life is fantastic. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful for her. It's challenging for her. But what she wants to do is completely selfless and completely in aid of other women. Exactly. And this is what this is what I'm doing, and what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the work. We actually want to reach out, make connection, help, lift each other up.
Yes.
And that is the extraordinary thing about this period in our lives. When we reach for more, it's not a selfish thing. It's I want to do what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And usually what I want to do is more connection. And more being. Yeah. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's so, I think that's so brilliant. You say that, they hit this point and what works for them is to help them get in alignment with their purpose. And I don't think that our purpose was so out of alignment before. It was just so overshadowed by socially, created constructs, culturally created constructs and ideas of what that should look like, that was the miss. Yeah. And so what's brilliant, I think, is as women journey through this, it doesn't feel negative to get more attuned, which is really what you're describing, is you're helping them in a journey of self-attunement. It only helps bolster them on their journey of making a difference in the world and the generativity and the legacy that they're looking to do, which is all about connection and all about, it still really is in some ways all about giving out care. There just has to be at some point a recognition that if you're not caring for the tool that goes out in the world and does all that beautiful stuff, that you're damaging your ability to do those things. And that's where we really have to say goodbye to the old programming and conditioning of our youth and earlier stages of adulthood, and just say, it doesn't serve me to think of it that way. It serves me to sit down and meditate every day for, this amount of time. It serves me to set my boundaries and only give away of my energy as much as I have to allot to that. Because if I don't reinvest in me, then none of the stuff that I want to go out into the world and do is going to be of value.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I'm absolutely, you've put it way better than I have. And you're absolutely right. I'm just like, I want to be selfish. No, but
no.
But you're right. This is the stage, and I recently did a little workshop. Actually, it was sort of 3 or 4 week workshop, which I absolutely adored. And it's one of the subjects that I always like to bring into when I'm doing is about the feminine archetypes. So so you have the child, the maiden, the mother. You have the kind of fierce warrior woman. That's her out in the work. And then at the end of life, or towards the end of the life, we have the crone. Mm-hmm. Now the crone is this beautiful, wise woman, because at this stage of life, it's kind of like we have this kind of superpower in that we have amassed a world's worth of experience, a lifetime of experience and wisdom, and everything that we've learned along the way, we can then begin to apply to the purpose that is deepest within us.
Right.
And this wisdom comes with being the crone archetype, who is just wise. And I know when you think of crone, you think of some old wizened old lady, witchy kind of thing. But actually, that comes whenever you invite it in. We can all, connect with all of the archetypes within us. We hold them all within us because we all have our inner child still within us. I think we all still have our inner maiden within us. And I think that's an aspect of, at this age, at this sort of mid-stage of life, I think looking back on your maiden life, there's teenage life, which, let's face it, from 14 to 21, and that sort of age. Oh my God, the transformation, the emotional stuff that you went through during that time. So I often encourage people to, yeah, of course, go and visit with your inner child and work out what you're holding on to that's no longer serving you. But go and visit with your inner maiden and give her some comfort, because God, we all got so messed up in our teenage years.
Well, and it's one of the times where we moved quickly. I mean, I know 14 to 21 doesn't seem quick. It's 7 years, but still, it is a pretty quick spin through so many changes, which is so similar to what we're going through from perimenopause to menopause, right? Like physically, for certain, there's a lot of parallels, but there's parallels in your life roles. There's parallels in, your psyche and your spiritual life. And so many parallels you could draw there.
In that sort of that rebellious phase that you have during those teenage years is kind of echoed in this midlife, this sort of era. And so I love, we can give ourselves permission to go, okay, so that was that phase, and now we're in this wise phase, and we've got all this perspective. We can sit up high and look back at the story of our lives and look at all of the people that we've met, all the experiences that we've had, and begin to really understand what served us, what lit us up, what we want more of, what we want less of, and then begin to create the life that we actually really fills us up. Right. Because, we want to live in this wholehearted space of fulfillment and satisfaction. Of course, that's not going to be 24/7, because that would be impossible. No. But overall, this is the baseline of just, I am actually walking the walk of where I want to be. I'm on the path that I want to tread. And understanding through your energetic body, using the chakras as a tool, if you like, is great.
Yeah. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, because it wasn't something I was taught. It's more something that I kind of arrived at in my awareness of those female archetypes. But I always envisioned the crone, the wise woman, to be kind of an integration of all the other archetypes. Like, right? It's really an arrival of a holding space for, I am all of these things, and I have wisdom from all of these aspects of my being. And then to them be able to turn and share that with others, because the other big part of that archetype is, serving the community, right? Yes. Serving the greater purpose of, helping us all have a better humanity around us. And we're using our wisdom and our caring in order to facilitate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think the crone is a beautiful thing to embrace within yourself.
Yes.
Because, not only do we have this wisdom, but we have this extraordinary thing where society stops seeing us. It's like, I'm just become complete Mrs. Cellophane, don't we? Invisible. But what an amazing superpower that is, because we know our power.
Yeah.
This is the thing that always blows my mind, is that, as let's say 14 to 30, when actually you really don't know yourself that well. You're kind of, you've had this intense, extraordinary power. The divine feminine was just so strong. And we used it in all sorts of interesting ways. Some of us used it more wisely than others, perhaps.
True. I mean, that's just facts. Yeah. Some of us used it a little better than others.
Yeah, exactly. But now, as you say, we can integrate that, and actually understanding all the layers of the divine feminine, this extraordinary power that we have as women in this age of maturity. And actually, society is becoming less unkind to us 50-somethings.
Yes.
60-somethings.
Yes.
We are becoming more visible, thank God. And it was that you see pictures of people, like even in the 1980s, and they were my age, and they had, sort of got, the sort of the perm, the grey perm, and the cardigan that's like given up, life, overdone. Thankfully we're not there still,
right?
But there is also a kind of rather joyful kind of little stealthiness about this age that we're in, where we can actually just be powerful under the surface without, we don't have to be overt.
Yeah.
We have this power that is undeniable, this wisdom that is undeniable. And whenever we choose to focus that energy in, is going to benefit.
Yes.
What an extraordinary power. What an extraordinary gift to have.
Exactly. It's an entirely a gift to us. Although I think there's resistance as we're doing that journey, and from first to second act of our lives, some women are pushing back on that some. So I love how you describe it as a gift, because it really is a gift. Some of us just have more reckoning to do around accepting it as a gift, I believe. Yeah. Which is why we do what we do, correct? Right, Roseanne? Like, that's why you and I are invested in reaching out, and hopefully somebody hears something that resonates for them and, grasps onto things that could be useful to them in making that journey. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. This has been delightful, very helpful information. Tell my listeners where they can find you, and do you have any offerings that you would like them to know about?
Oh, gosh, yes. Well, you can reach me in everything that I do at my website, which is chakra-way.com. And the Chakra Way is the name of my business.
Okay.
And there you will find information. There's lots of free resources. There's a couple of free, I think there's a couple of meditations. There's a yoga class. There's all sorts of bits and pieces there that you can just download for free. There is also information about my courses. So at the moment, I've got this beautiful course called the Chakra Way Journey, which is a big one, and it's a 7-month journey through the chakras. Because I found it's interesting, when I did it in this 8 weeks, people were just like, wait, it's too fast. And actually, when I'm doing this on a one-to-one basis, what I'm finding is that the transformation over 7 months, you can really integrate over 7 months.
Yeah.
And the shift is really real. You have the space to do all of the work that you want to do. So there's that. It's not open for registration at the moment, but it will be soon. And then the other offering that I have, which I think people will find really interesting, is I do chakra readings. So if you are in understanding where your energy levels are at, where your blockages are at, what I do is this very deep dive. So it takes about 2 hours, and we go through each chakra, and we go through like all the different aspects of your chakras. So say, for example, we were reading like your solar plexus chakra. We would look at your energy, your power, your assertiveness, your self-worth, your self-esteem, your ego, your purpose. So we look at thing, because there's no point in me just going, oh yeah, your solar plexus chakra is slightly out of balance. We need to know where, which aspects, because there's a lot here. Is it something, how's your digestive system? How's your, in the root chakra, there's so much, as I've said before, home, families, money, there's all of these things.
Right.
So where are we finding the imbalances? And then once I've got a full picture, I then do a big, massive diagnosis, all the solutions and everything that is going to give you a beautiful, set you on your way, to go forward and achieve what you want to get done in life.
That's lovely.
The chakra reading is one of my favorite thing, and it's very popular. It's a really popular thing because it's actually pretty good value given the amount of time it takes to do.
Yeah, exactly. That's wonderful. And it does go through all the main, is it 7 or 8 chakras? 8 chakras?
7. Okay. 7 chakras.
7.
Yeah. So we go through all 7 chakras, and as you go through, you're going to learn about what is there, but you're also going to connect with each energy center. And people and we connect with your inner power, we connect with your inner goddess, we connect with your grounding energy, we go into your spirituality and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a real big energetic overhaul. Yeah. It's a big one, but it's, that can all be found there at chakra-way.com. And I'm not very active on my socials, but I'm yoga with Roseanne on Instagram, but I don't show up there very often, so don't worry about that.
So don't shout out to her there. Go to the website. All right. And we'll make sure those links are in the notes as well.
Yes, exactly. And of course, I've got a podcast as well, the Chakra Way Meditation Podcast, where I offer weekly meditations.
Oh, well, definitely make sure to hook my my listenership up with that because I talk to them about doing meditations all the time. So that's a nice new resource for you guys. I'll make sure that the podcast is there. Are they all meditations or do you do other like informational things on your podcast?
So every week I drop a 10 to 15 minute meditation. I think there are about 160 odd meditations there, all different various subjects and things. And then I also drop in every other week a chat with someone like yourself. And I would love to have you as a guest on my podcast.
Oh, I would love to. I would love to come on. So make sure to send me a sign up because I'm all about that. I love to guest on other people's podcasts as well. It's just fun. This has been, I mean, you and I could talk forever, but doing the podcast has been such a wonderful journey for me. It definitely brought some liveliness, I think, to what I'm doing. I'm such a people person as a psychologist that just doing creative work that was individual didn't light my soul on fire the same as getting to talk to people. So, and from all across the world, which has been amazing for me as well.
I know it is the biggest gift to be able to talk to people and learn.
Yeah.
You know, for me, when I'm talking people, I'm learning all the time, and it's such a beautiful source of growth, which is why people love podcasts, and because you do learn.
It is. You do learn
and grow.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Roseanne, for being on the podcast.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I just feel like that podcast was a breath of fresh air for me. I don't know about you, but it was a breath of fresh air for me. A lot of synchronicities with what I do on Learn to Love Your Story. And ironically, right, I don't do body-based work. I'm not doing energetic work in the same way that Roseanne is, but the concepts are the same, very affirming for me, as you heard in the podcast, and very affirming for you because we're all teaching you guys the same things. We really do want you to find this centered life, want you to draw into what your life's purpose is, to feel like you are interconnected with why you were put on this earth and what you're here to bring all of us. So please keep listening to this podcast. If you think that something today really resonated for you or could resonate for a friend of yours, please forward this podcast to that friend. Please tag them and let them know that this is one that they might want to listen to. I'm pretty sure Miss Roseanne Nieboer is going to be on the podcast again, and we will bring her back probably to talk more in depth about the chakras and what we need to know. What I'm really interested in learning a little bit more about is when we're having blockages or having difficulties, what does that look like in which chakra areas? And then what should we show up and do differently in order to clear those chakra areas? So keep listening to the podcast. Please share and like and comment anytime on the podcast because all of that is really useful to me so that I make sure to plug in and give you what you want to hear on the podcast. So keep staying compassionately self-aware so that you can have that centered life thriving. Because I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, I have to make sure at the end of each of these episodes that I give you the disclaimer that none of the material that I talk about in these podcasts is meant to replace any kind of therapy or formal medical or mental health treatment. And in fact, anything that I offer on my website, my coaching programs, any kind of psychoeducational materials that I release are not a replacement for that level of care. So just take that into account when you listen. This is information for you, and hopefully you find it of value, both as an educational tool and for your entertainment. And I also want to mention that if anyone you know is in a mental health crisis, needs additional help, I always include these 2 crisis resources. They're available to anybody. Pick up the phone and dial 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And you can always visit their website at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Additionally, there's actually a crisis text line. So if you're not somebody that likes to pick up the phone, text HOME, home, to 741-741. to the Crisis Text Line. And you can find them online at crisistextline.org. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and I hope that you like and follow me wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe consider leaving me a review. It always helps me to keep this podcast relevant when I know what you want to hear about.